Okay, so thank you guys for participating live or able to at 8 p.m. here at night instead of regularly 4 p.m. We had a lot of weather issues, which maybe they didn't necessarily directly affect you, but it affects a lot of other things. It affects traffic and affects electricity and the internet and telephone services. And usually when we have bad weather, it's an exponential effect on multiple systems. Okay, here's first of all, here is something I'm doing because I have a situation now to where one person made a mistake on one of the Proxmox servers, and this is something I probably should have tried to prevent. They changed the root password on their Proxmox server, and they can't remember what they changed it to. And I'm not talking about a container or a VM. They changed it on the Proxmox server. They can't remember what to change it to or what they changed it to. So now I can't log in to that Proxmox server. The only way I'll be able to fix that and override that password is I have to go, excuse me, I have to go up to U of H, reboot the server into basically like a safe mode, which for those of you that have ever used PCs, there's a way to boot into a safe mode. With most Linuxes or most Linux systems, alter the command line and boot it up without a password, change the root password, then reboot, which is what I'll have to do. What I should have done to prevent that from happening is either added another root user or another admin user that could have power over root, or, and this is what I did on all of the other servers, and you guys need to tell me if this affects you or not. I changed the root password on Proxmox, assuming that you guys already have set up an admin user on Proxmox for when and if you have to do any admin things. Most of the admin things that you're doing at this point in Proxmox is maybe you're uploading an ISO file, but you really don't need to be doing that much admin in Proxmox. You should just be at the point to where you're creating a container or VM, and any admin things that you're learning how to do, you're doing them, excuse me, you're doing them in those containers or in those VMs, not in Proxmox. Let me be the admin of the Proxmoxes. If there's something that needs to be updated or changed, or there's something that you're trying to do with your container or your VM that you can't do with your Proxmox login user, let me know, because I want to make sure that all of the admin things, administrative things, creating virtual machines, creating containers, creating snapshots, I want to make sure that we can do that without having to be the root user, because it's just not safe to be the root user. So if you are using sudo or you are using the su command, that's because you're trying to install the LAMP stack in a container or Nginx or some other, or WordPress or something else that we may talk about today within your container and within your VM. So Cargan and Firewall, for those of you two that are here right now, I want you guys to try, make sure you can access your Proxmox and do everything that you need to do, excuse me, that you need to be doing in terms of making backups, taking snapshots, and generally being able to control your, I'm going to change something, generally being able to control your Proxmox server or your containers and your VMs without having to be the root user. So you guys can do that now, or just report it to me at a later time if you realize, hey, there's stuff I'm trying to do that I can't do. So as I said, I changed the root password. So if you're trying to get into, see how that's saying connection error, for example, that's because I changed the password while I was still logged into Proxmox 2 here. So refresh, you need to take all that junk off the screen and refresh and try to log back in just as the original URL. And you'll need to log in with your username. Now, I forgot if I added a username of Jake on here, so I'm going to check it real quick because I should. And if I didn't, I will add myself as a user real quick. Let's see, that's very small. I'm going to unscale that for a minute. So I should, in other words, I should be the only one logging in as root, okay? Is that okay with you guys? And you guys let me know if there's something that you can't do properly as the individual user. So if I look on here it's under data center and users. So there's Zach on this server. Which servers are you guys on, Carden and Firewalk? Open my chat window again so I can see you typing. Okay, so are you guys both on 7 or just Carden's on 7? So if I log into 7, let me just double check that real quick here. So if I log into 7, I'm getting errors, so I need to log out and back in. So log out, log in, root. Oh, wrong screen, wrong keyboard. The keyboards are hurting. Let me move one to the side here. And this way, this will keep people from accidentally changing the root password. Let's see if I can do it via PuTTY. Yeah, okay. Let me close this and reopen it. Sometimes you need to close all your Proxmox windows, especially since I'm not VPN. I'm directly viewing them, not VPN. Are you two able to use VPN, or are you just using the forwards that I set up? Pretty sure it was server 8. I just must be fat fingering it. Oh, that's fine. I'm trying to log into server 8. I apologize. So yeah, server 8, I don't know the password to anymore. So I have to go to U of H and fix that. Sorry for the delay here. Just want to get logged in and make sure that you guys can do stuff on these servers as your username. Okay. Are you on a team by yourself, Cargan? Seems like nobody else is on team 7. Not see anything else going on there. What are you frowning for? Because you're all by yourself? You should be happy if you're all by yourself. That means you got a server all to yourself. Let me know why you're frowning. Oh, I'm smiling. Okay. So anyway, I'm slowly looking at stuff for each person, trying to get the emails answered and going one at a time and making sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing. For the most part, like I'm just looking at yours, for example, and for the most part, several of you are doing what I want you to do. You've created at least one container and at least one VM, and they're operating, and you're writing note. You're doing the housekeeping stuff. This is the most important part of it. You're doing housekeeping stuff. Your networking is functioning. You have created additional users, and then some of you have gone ahead and been able to successfully install the LAMP stack and or Virtualmin in both the container and the VM. Now I see 2 here. You got 1 running and 1 not running. And any reason why 1's not running, Cargan? 2 new to use Virtualmin. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So that's interesting to note that. And I think I mentioned that in the previous class, that some of the distributions are using packages that are not compatible with some of these other packages that we want to install, like Virtualmin. Maybe Ubuntu 19 prefers and suggests that you use Plesk or cPanel. I'm not sure, because I'm not a big Ubuntu guy, certainly not Ubuntu 19. I haven't done a lot of excuse me, I'm so sorry, I'm losing my voice here. I've been talking all day. I haven't done a lot of research into the newest versions of 19, but one thing you'll notice, by the way, is that the distributions are much further along than Windows distributions, for example. You know, we're already up to Ubuntu 19, and Windows is only up to Windows 10. And Linux has been around not as long. And that's because when you've got 1 million people working on the distributions, almost literally, changes can happen a lot faster. So I'm kind of showing yours, Cargan, because other people watching this video, and I have had some emails from some people, like Farwa, for example, saying, hey, I'm not really sure where I need to be. So Farwa, take a look at where Cargan's at. These are even though I haven't officially made assignments that you're turning in yet, I've talked many times about what I'm expecting to see when I log in to the different servers. So Cargan's got 2 containers and 2 VMs of different flavors that he's been experimenting with, both CentOS and Ubuntu. He's making notes. If I were to, excuse me, so sorry. You have to postpone this and do it another time. If I were to get a console to these and see where he's at and see what he's installed, I may check and see if SSH is functioning, that kind of stuff. I may check and see if he claims he's got LAMP installed. So on this one, he claims LAMP is installed. Now, I don't necessarily know what the root password is. I probably need to make an assignment that you can turn in so that you can share with me the root password in the assignment so that it doesn't have to be published out here. That's probably better than putting it in the notes. So if I were to go to that IP, I'd like to log in as Virtualmin, but let's just see if Virtualmin's actually running. The easiest way to tell is just go try to run it. I'm not going to use a domain name. Oh, it's just lagging really bad, excuse me. Virtualmin is running on port 10,000. Now it's complaining. Are you sure that you got it installed properly? Oh, you just installed LAMP. You did not install, excuse me, you didn't install Virtualmin, you installed LAMP. So if I want to see if LAMP is installed, I'm just going to first try to go to 192.168.40.101 without HTTPS just to see if anything comes up. Just guessing. And I see that. So what this tells me from there, Farwa, if you're listening, is that, and everybody else that's watching this video, is that Cargan has put in the folder var www.html. Let me open up a Word document here. Without me even logging in, I can tell. I can tell from this that within his virtual machine there under var www.html, he's got a file called index.php. And the reason I know this is because I didn't type anything after that 101. I didn't specify as something like test.php or cargan.php or anything else that he would have told me to go check. And that also implies and tells me that he must have edited the parameter for the document root in the configuration file for Apache. In the case of Ubuntu, it's actually asking you to install Apache and not HTTPD. So somewhere in one of the configuration files, he's altered that so that it looks for index.php first, as opposed to looking for index.html. Now, I'm going to try this just for grins and giggles. I'm going to literally specify index.html just to see if there's anything there. And there is. So that's obviously what he did first. He got the app part of LAMP installed, created a simple little index.html. And they're probably, when you install Apache, by the way, in Ubuntu, not in CentOS. I'm pretty sure in CentOS it leaves it blank, but in Ubuntu, when you install Apache, it downloads and installs in that folder, the var www.html. It installs a sample index.html for you. Cargan obviously renamed it or obliterated what was in there and wrote a little bit of HTML code, but you know, Cargan, whatever was on that page. And so I was able to see that. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for. A lot of it is implied. I don't even have to log into his container. I don't have to know his root password to know whether he's got that installed or not, or installed or not yet. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for. Okay, so you're on a pretty good track. Cargan's on an A track so far. Okay, so if everybody else who's watching is that far along where you've got LAMP installed, and I can see that PHP page, and then on one of your containers, maybe not Ubuntu 19 because it didn't like Virtualmin, that you have Virtualmin installed, you're also doing pretty well. So I'll go back to Proxmox 7 here. I'll look here under this, maybe this Ubuntu 18, I'm going to guess. Again, don't tell me, Cargan, which one you've installed. It says here, I've installed Virtualmin. So he put it under that IP address. So the way I'm going to check that just to see if it's installed, again, I'm not even going to try to log in. I'm just going to try to go to the login page for it. https:// that IP address :10,000, which is the port that it runs on. And this already looks pretty promising. If I get that, I know, okay, he's got it installed. Excuse me. Now, is everything functioning properly? I don't know yet. I'll make that assignment and request a username, a root username of the container or the VM that you have Webmin installed on, so that I can check and see what domains you may have created, because I don't know that yet. The only way I would know what domains you created is either by logging into Webmin or Virtualmin. It's saying what domains you created, or I'd have to gain access to your virtual Windows machine, assuming that you're using one in the lab. A lot of people are not, because they couldn't get the VPN working properly, or they couldn't get Citrix working properly on their computer for other technical reasons, which is fine. We don't have to be doing that. So you'll have to share that with me. So again, that's where I need to be seeing this somewhere on one of your machines, either a virtual machine or a container. In this case, he's got it running in a container. I'd like to also see it running on a virtual machine. So right now you've got no LAMP or GUI on this CentOS 6. Why is that? Just didn't do it on that one. And this Ubuntu, what version of Ubuntu is this? Okay, so that's Ubuntu 20. Okay, so Ubuntu 20, very new. I may not be able to help you with that unless I go look up Ubuntu. It says you got LAMP installed. Now, how did you install LAMP if you didn't have networking, or do you have networking? Don't quite understand what you're saying. Cannot find network file to edit IP. Are you talking about, because the default IP cannot be that. Okay, so that can't be working unless Ubuntu 20 also is installed something called Nginx, but that can't be working like that. First of all, you don't have physical access to that network. Oh, actually, excuse me. You do to that, because that's just a DHC. I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to change DHCP to static. Okay, I got you now. In other words, that was assigned by my server, the DHCP server in the lab. You're trying to change that to static. I understand what you're saying now. Even if you can't figure out how to change that to static, you could still install LAMP, which it looks like you did. Probably can't install Virtualmin if it doesn't run on Ubuntu 19. It's not going to install on Ubuntu 20. So I'd like you to, Cargan, also install LAMP and Virtualmin on this CentOS 6. That's a CentOS 6 minimal, so you probably are going to have to install some other things if it's minimal, like Nano Editor. Otherwise, you're stuck using the VI. So that's kind of your next step. Get it running here. Now, can't use the same IP address, obviously, as your container. And I'm saying that knowing that you probably know that, but a lot of people in the class may not know that. A container and a VM, these are separate machines. One's just a different flavor of one. It's like, here's a Volkswagen and here's a Toyota. They're still two different cars, and they need two different parking spaces. They need two different IP addresses. If you choose, or if you go ahead and install Virtualmin on this virtual machine, you need to come up with another domain name, not the same domain name that you created for this virtual machine. Oh no, and excuse me, not that virtual machine. Was it this one? Yeah, for that Ubuntu 18. can't be the same domain name because a domain can only live on one machine at a time because it can only have one IP address associated with it. So come up with a new domain name, make sure that it's functioning there, and then what I may have you do, and I'll probably show this tomorrow as soon as I've got enough people running Virtualmin on 2 different machines. 1 container, 1 VM, or it could be 2 containers, but I prefer to be on 1 container, 1 VM. I will show you guys how to save and migrate a domain from one machine to another, because that's a very useful thing to know and a very common thing to do. Migrating a VM, migrating a virtual domain. We have several different levels of virtuosity here. A virtual domain running in Virtualmin is up here at the application layer. What we are not doing is migrating a VM from one server to another. I probably will show you guys how to do that too, but not quite at this point. Right now, I'd rather that you guys concentrate on learning Virtualmin a little bit better and playing around more so at the application layer more than the Proxmox layer and moving virtual machines around. In other words, I want you to create some more content on purpose. Now, I mentioned in the link that I sent out, I mentioned WordPress. Now, I don't think I've showed you guys WordPress, and maybe you guys can answer the question. I don't think I've showed you guys WordPress yet. Have I showed you WordPress this semester? Don't think I have. So WordPress is one of several packages available for content management. So what we're building here, we first built a platform, or I built a platform for you called Proxmox. On top of that, you are building containers and VMs, which you installed a Linux distribution on top of. On top of that Linux distribution, you've installed a virtual application that allows you to have virtual domains, cargan.com, for example, or firewall.org, or whatever you want to call it. And then on top of those virtual domains, I would like you to install an instance of WordPress. So I will just show you. Let's say that you've got WordPress. Now there's different websites that you can go to that will talk to you about how to install WordPress, but I want you to Google specifically for how to install WordPress under Virtualmin, because there's some differences there. Now, I'm not going to type in installing WordPress on Ubuntu or CentOS. I'm just going to type in install, I can't type it. And let's see what we find there. Install WordPress using Virtualmin. There's a video. Let's use this link here, this host wins. This is what I used in the previous semester to show people how to do this. So if you went to wordpress.org and you read the instruction on how to install WordPress, they will not assume that you're doing it in Virtualmin. They will assume that you're doing it in either a virtual machine itself under var www.html, or that you're literally installing in bare metal, again under var www.html. But it's important to recognize that once you've installed Virtualmin, we no longer use var www.html. We use a folder that's created for each domain underneath the home directory. So now we're looking for, if for example, I'm just going to guess that on Cargan's computer, he created a domain called cargan.com. So there will be a folder called home, Cargan. It leaves the .com off, / and then underneath that there's several folders, one of which is called public _HTML. And that's where you would put your index.php or index.html TML, excuse me, or where you would install a package such as Virtualmin. So let's read through here and see what it's suggesting to do. And it's actually suggesting to do this from the Webmin GUI, which is kind of nice. So it says, log into Virtualmin, then switch over to Webmin, which is not dealing with virtual domains, it's dealing with file manager access. It says go to file manager. I may disagree with a couple steps here, so let's read this together. Navigate to where you want to install WordPress. Now you could do this from the Virtualmin side. There's a lot of things you can do on both sides, Virtualmin or Webmin. I want you to install it underneath the directory for that domain. So you might want to actually do it from Virtualmin. So if I was to log in, I'm going to log into one of my Virtualmin servers, okay, one of my public servers. Just to show you how I would do it if I was installing Virtualmin. I've got several domains that I'm not really doing anything with right now, so let's just say I want to put a domain under this ameds. No, not that one. I guess I'm not. Yeah, I'll just choose this one, ameds.net. Click on that. If I click on that, underneath here, now it says go to file, it says go to Webmin. We can do it from here because we should have, I believe we do have a file manager underneath the domain as well. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure we do. I'm looking for it. I don't see it. It's not, maybe it's not real obvious, but I'll go ahead and switch over to Webmin here. And I'll go to the file manager. This is an older version of Webmin, so that's why it looks different, by the way. That's under other file manager. Where would I upload? And that's what it's asking you to do. It's saying upload to the current directory. It's assuming that you've already found WordPress and downloaded it to your local computer. Before you begin, please go and download the most recent version of WordPress onto your computer. So you're going to want to go to wordpress.org and you're looking for a zip file, WordPress something .zip. You're going to download it to your local Windows computer or your local Mac. Then you're going to come to Virtualmin here, go into the file manager, navigate to the correct directory. So I said I wanted to put it under ameds.net. So I will look under home. There's all my directories. There's the ameds.net. Now mine actually is ameds.net because I told my Virtualmin I wanted to see those TLD extensions, but yours probably would just say ameds, for example, or Oregon. There's the public underscore HTML file, folder. Let's see what it's saying to do. It says go to that folder, public underscore HTML, upload that file to that directory, and then extract the data of that file into that directory. And you can do that directly from File Manager. So I'm not going to really upload it, but this is where you would upload it. One of these icons is the upload icon. There it is, upload a file. Go choose a file off of my machine. I'm going to go to the downloads folder. I'm just going to pretend that one of these is WordPress. I don't want to take a lot of time and download WordPress. So. I'll pretend that it's going to upload really quickly, but I'll pretend that was my WordPress file. Upload that. It'll take a little longer than that, obviously. And then you're going to click on that and unzip it. Or extract it. Same thing as unzipping it. It will create for you underneath that public HTML folder another folder called WordPress with all of this content in it. It'll create a new folder called WP Admin, a folder called WP Content, another folder called WP Includes. And by the way, for those of you that are not finished with, I don't want anybody to start on attempting to install WordPress until you have Virtualmin fully installed and you've experimented with creating at least one or two domain names and that you can access index.php or test.php and get some output on the screen. I don't want you to do anything else yet until you get that done. And you've made what I haven't done here, which I recommend you, if you're following me right now, Cargan and Firewall, make sure before you actually upload and attempt to install WordPress, you take a snapshot of your VM or your container in case you don't do the download and the upload correctly. So once you extract these files, you end up with these files. Select the edit box and it wants you to edit this file right here, wp-config.sample. You're going to edit it and rename it as wp-config. You're going to take out the word sample, rename it to wp-config.php. Simply rename it. Then you're going to edit these four, actually only 3 items. You don't need to edit DB-host. You need to edit those 3 items inside that file. And this is why they're suggesting to use Virtualmin, because you don't have to worry about Nano, because you're doing it all from the web GUI. And it wants you to edit these 3 items, the name of the database, the username, and the password. What do you put there? Well, a database was already created, and that's where this differs from the regular WordPress installation. WordPress suggests that you create a new database called WordPress, and that you created a new user called WordPress user, and you create a new password. You don't have to do that, because if you look underneath Virtualmin here, I'm going to go back to Virtualmin here, and I've got this ameds.net. Underneath server configuration, I probably have already created a database for it. By default, each domain that you create, it creates a little subdomain, not a subdomain, it creates a database for you with the same name. So if you have a domain called cargan.com, it created an SQL database called Cargan for you. So there should be a database running. I may not have a database installed for these, but there will already be a database installed, and the password for that database, that SQL database, should be what you set the domain to. The password for the domain. You can change it if you need to. Oh, here it is, edit databases. So there's a database called ameds_net. In this case, it's just going to be called, it's not going to have that _net or _org there for you. There will be no tables yet in it because you haven't created anything. You're going to edit that wp-config PHP program, which is a script, which will populate this database with all the tables that WordPress uses after you run it. So you edit that. The 3 things you have to have are the name of the database, so that has to exist. You have to have the username, which is probably, again, Cargan, in the case of cargan.com. Or, and again, it depends on, if I go back to ameds.net, click on users here. That's my username, ameds.net. So by default, Virtualmin creates a domain called something.com if you created it. So for Cargan, cargan.com. created a domain, excuse me, a database called Cargan, and it created a user called Cargan, and the password for that SQL user should be the same password you created when you created the domain. And you probably use the same, hopefully you use the same as the root password for this VM or container. That makes it easy for you if you don't choose a bunch of different passwords. So after you enter that information and you run this script, and the way you run the script is then you go back to your domain name from a web browser, cargan.com, cargan.whatever you called it, farwa.com, /wp-admin /install.php. And it will run an install script for you. It'll ask you what language you want to install it in. It'll ask you a little bit more information, a password for WordPress. Again, I would make your password the same as your domain password, the same as your VM's password. Put in a valid email address there. Run that script, and WordPress will automatically generate several tables within that database that it uses. So that's kind of the next step that I would like people to try, assuming they've got Virtualmin running and installed. They've created already one domain. If you haven't created a domain yet, if you've installed Virtualmin but haven't created a domain, you can't install WordPress this way. You have to create a working domain already with an SQL database that you can access. As a test, to make sure that you can access the database, I would recommend going into the database like this. From Virtualmin here, I'm in Virtualmin, and trying to create a table in that database, just some random table, and that will just tell you whether or not you have the password right or not. So here's the name of the database. I'm not going to create a new database. I want to use just one database per domain. I'll click on Manage this database. I don't think it will ask for the password when you do this. I just create a new table. Junk, doesn't matter what I call it. Oh, that's because I didn't give it any fields. Junk 1, data type. Doesn't really matter what you call it. There, I created a table with one field in it, no records. Simple little field. So if I can create a table called junk here, that means that the password that I'm typing in for this domain that I logged in with Virtualmin, that is also the same password as the SQL password for that domain. I'm going to get rid of that database because I don't want a database called junk. Oh no, I don't want to do that. Almost messed up there. I don't want to drop the database for amens. I want to drop the table. That was close. Don't erase the database for your domain. It's not the end of the world if you do, but don't erase the database because then you'll lose statistical information. There are some other tables by default in the domain database for statistics tracking. Okay, so are there any questions from either one of you guys that are here right now? If you let me end the class early, I'll take some time and I'll go through the emails. I'll hit your emails first, Farwa, and make sure I can push you guys along so that you understand where you're supposed to be. Hopefully, by showing some other people how far they've gotten and using them as examples, and you guys are watching these videos, you can see where you're supposed to be. So if you're not there, if you don't see where these other users are that I've been showing examples of. We need to get you there. So email me, let me know what part you're having a problem with specifically. If you've already done that, I'll go back and I'll look at my emails. But we need to push you to where you've caught up with Cargan and a couple of the other users. He's not the only one. He just happens to be the one that's here today. I'm using it as an example. And Cargan, you know what I wanted you to do, right? Create and install Virtualmin in your VM, as well as the container. Make up a different domain, different IP address, and then try to get WordPress installed. Make sure you do snapshots first. If you've got time this evening, see if you can get WordPress installed on one of them, following these instructions, not the instructions that you generically find at wordpress.org, because we're doing it under Virtualmin. Okay? And this is supposedly an easier way to do it from the GUI. So you really don't even have to do anything from the command line. So if there aren't any other questions from you two, I'll go ahead and end the recording in the session now. I'll read through your emails. I'll get to everybody else's emails. I have more time now that we've got a lot of that stuff from last week dealt with. I would have had more time to do some of this today if that big storm had not popped up. I thought that storm was supposed to happen tomorrow, not today. Okay, so stop sharing. Let me get to work on this. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to stop this recording, convert it, and upload it to YouTube. So I need a little bit of time to do that first, Farwa, and then I'll get to your emails. But I want to record. I want to upload this first. So for those that didn't attend today and wondering where they need to be, they have something to do before tomorrow's class meeting at 4. So hopefully we don't have to postpone this till some later time. We can start at 4 p.m. tomorrow. All right, so I'll see you guys tomorrow at 4. Go Cougs.